In the 20th century, ethnographers made a concerted effort to collect Mexican-American folklore, but they did not always agree about that folklore's origins. Scholars such as Aurelio Espinosa claimed that Mexican-American folklore derived largely from the folklore of Spain, which ruled Mexico and what is now the southwestern United States, from the 16th to early 19th centuries. Scholars such as Américo Paredes, by contrast, argued that while some Spanish influence is undeniable, Mexican-American folklore is mainly the product of the ongoing interactions of various cultures in Mexico and the United States. Which finding, if true, would most directly support Paredes's argument? A. The folklore that the ethnographers collected included several songs written in the form of a décima, a type of poem originating in late 16th century Spain. B. Much of the folklore that the ethnographers collected had similar elements from region to region. C. Most of the folklore that the ethnographers collected was previously unknown to scholars. D. Most of the folklore that the ethnographers collected consisted of corridos, ballads about history and social life of a clearly recent origin.
In question number 16, we are talking about ethnographers in the 20th century. They made a concerted effort to collect Mexican-American folklore. But they were not agreeing about these folklore's origins. And then they gave two examples. Scholars such as Aurelio Espinosa claimed that Mexican-American folklore derived largely from folklore of Spain. This one is claiming this thing. And he's also saying which ruled Mexico and is now southwestern United States and all that. Then they're talking about the other scholar, Américo Paredes, and this is a contrasting claim. He argued that while some Spanish influence is undeniable, Mexican-American folklore is mainly the product of ongoing interactions. He's saying it's currently what's happening, the ongoing interactions of various cultures in Mexico and United States. So the cultures between Mexico and United States are interacting, and that's how this folklore is coming up, what he says. Now, which finding, if true, would support Paredes's argument? So we need something to support Américo Paredes's argument that it is because of the interactions. So which should we choose? So if you say D, well done. Most of the folklore that ethnographers collected consisted of corridos, ballets about history and social life of a clearly recent origin. So if this is true, then that can support Américo Paredes. So choice D is the best answer because it presents a finding that, if true, would support Paredes's argument about the origin of Mexican-American folklore. The text describes a disagreement among scholars about whether Mexican-American folklore mostly derived from the folklore of Spain, the view held by Espinosa and others, or originated in Mexico and the United States through ongoing cultural interactions there, the view held by Paredes and others. If Mexican-American folklore collected in the 20th century mostly consists of ballads about history and social life that originated recently, then that would support Paredes's argument by suggesting that the folklore mostly arose after Spanish rule ended in the early 19th century and that the folklore reflects cultural interactions in Mexico and the United States rather than traditions from Spain.
Choice A is incorrect because the inclusion of songs influenced by 16th century Spanish poetry among Mexican-American folklore collected in the 20th century would not support Paredes's view that the folklore was the result of cultural interactions in Mexico and the United States, rather than an offshoot of Spanish folklore. If anything, the presence of such songs among the folklore collected in the 20th century would weaken Paredes's argument, since it would reflect the influence of Spanish culture on the folklore. Choice B is incorrect because the mere presence of similarities in Mexican-American folklore across regions would not be sufficient to draw a conclusion about where the folklore originated, let alone to support Paredes's argument that the folklore reflects various cultural interactions in Mexico and the United States. In fact, Paredes would likely expect there to be regional variations in folklore as different cultures have interacted in different places. Choice C is incorrect because scholars' previous ignorance of the folklore would have no bearing on Paredes's argument that Mexican-American folklore mostly reflects cultural interactions in Mexico and the United States. The folklore's actual origins exist regardless of the scholar's awareness.